Good Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast presented by our good friends at Blue Water Climate Control. As the summer heat rises, humidity and everything kicks in, make sure your air condition is at full tilt, full strength. That's what you need. You need all the cool air you can get this time of year. Blue Water Climate Control can make sure that happens for you. Whether you need a clean out, whether you need a system tune up, whatever you need, they can take care of it at Blue Water Climate Control. They're going to send out the right guy to do the right job the right way the first time. Not a sales guy, but a repair guy. That's at Blue Water Climate Control. Check them out online at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com or give them a buzz at 865-299-2290. Whole gang's all here, back to regular strength with Austin Price and Rob Lewis, Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along as SEC Media Days are underway. Tennessee and Josh Heupel will meet the media in just a little bit, and obviously we'll have full coverage of that coming away. Guys, I think we all believe that quarterback's probably going to be the most asked question to Josh Heupel. But Rob, let me ask you this. Everybody talks about winning the day, winning the press conferences and all these things. But what's Josh Heupel trying to accomplish in his first media day appearance? What's the tone he's trying to set, you think?
I mean, it's a new day. I mean, the positive energy would be what I would say. Something that, I'm not saying Jeremy was negative or anything, but I don't think he really cared about projecting and being the face of a program, selling it. I think Heupel cares. I'm also not saying that it's the most important thing in the world. I mean, you got to win football games, right. but I do think Josh cares about public perception, about putting, trying to sell the brand to let fans, recruits, just people, observers of college football in general, to let them know what he's about, what this program is about. And I think he wants to be, and to me, I guess, at least from what I've seen so far, he wants to be positive. I mean, not like just rah, everything's great, but just, positive. Things are what they are, but we're working and we're going to turn this thing around.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up. And Austin, you can jump in here as well with Rob. If you're Josh Heupel, where is that line of be patient with us versus, hey, we're moving in the right direction, we're going to be exciting on offense, and selling some things that way? How do you balance that line, or how important is it for Josh Heupel to balance that line for the Tennessee fan base, not the national media, but the Tennessee fan base?
Well, I think that the best thing that Josh Heupel could do is just come in and talk about what they're going to try to get done, and not talk about, well, this is year zero, or we were left with nothing, or like nobody wants to hear that. Not a soul wants to hear that, because that's all they've heard for a decade is the year zero and all that stuff. So I think the best thing you do is come in and say, hey, we're going to keep, our stuff to score points. Our plans are to be exciting, be competitive, and, just trying to change the culture in Knoxville. I just don't think anybody wants to hear any of that, like, well, wait till next year talk. Well, I think everybody understands Tennessee's not going to be a 9-10 win football team this year. So don't come out there trying to set low expectations. Just come out there and just talk about what you want to try to accomplish in your first year.
Rob, how does Josh Heupel answer the quarterback question? How do you think he addresses that?
No, I don't think there'd be anything close to the
just wide answer. Open.
Yeah, I don't think he'll even narrow it down to two. I mean, I think what you said, wide open, would be my strong suspicion. Don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can do anything any different than that. I mean, I think he'll be asked about when you want to narrow it down, and I think he will be as vague as he can be throughout all that process. Because I don't think they have any answer. I don't think that's lying. I just think that's where they're at. But before one guy's in the quarterback competition in Joe Milton, and he's never done anything, in a team setting or a team practice. So I think that's an easy answer for Josh Heupel. And I'm with you, Rob. I just think that these things are a bit overblown. I think Austin would probably agree that you probably make too much out of what somebody says or doesn't say, in a media day. I think the coach's belief is, let's just kind of get through it without making headlines. Let's make sure we don't say anything we don't need to say, and don't make any headlines that, everybody's going to be talking about us for 2 or 3 days afterwards, because you just don't want to hear that. You don't want to be that group, I guess. On to other bigger things, to me, as Greg Sankey took the podium on Monday to talk, that two things jump out to me, and I want to get your reaction to both of them. One is he said 16 over the last year, 1,600 FBS scholarship athletes entered the transfer portal. 1,100 of those are still in the portal. How surprising is that number to you guys?
I guess the total number is pretty high. The fact, but I mean, you talked about this. I mean, I mean, I'm sure other people did too, but I can definitely remember you talking about it. Is there's a lot of these kids are in for a harsh dose of reality. And I'm surprised it's 1,100, but I'm not surprised it's a big number.
Austin, does that slow it down, or is there enough guys finding other places to play that everybody's going to be talking about? They're not going to talk about the 1,100 that didn't find a place to play. They're going to talk about who left a Power 5 to go to a Power 5 and had success. But do you think that 1,100 number slows any transfer movement down in the coming year, or do you think that number is going to be even higher because so many kids signed and went somewhere a year ago without ever seeing it?
I think it'll be about the same. I think you'll in certain instances you're going to see coaches be able to show those statistics and stop a kid from leaving. But at the end of the day, it's all about your self-worth and what you think you're worth. Like a lot of these kids think they're better than they are, or a lot of these kids think they are worth more than they are when it comes to the NIL. So you're going to hear more about somebody getting paid $20,000 versus the 70 kids that got nothing or pennies. You're going to hear more about the kids that go from Ohio State to Alabama, and very few about the kids that left Alabama and are stuck in the portal. I just think ultimately, what a kid feels like he's worth, both NIL wise and transfer portal wise, is a bit inflated for a lot of these kids, and I think that's why they make some bad decisions.
Rob, I mean, in basketball, before they took the rule out about or put the rule in place where you have to go to college for a year, you can't jump straight to the NBA from the high school ranks. Were numbers trending down in that world, or was it because of the Kobe Bryants and enough people out there having success coming straight out of high school? Were those everybody buying that dream as opposed to the reality of some guys who never even got drafted or didn't make it?
I mean, I could be wrong on this because I've not looked it up, but I feel like it was coming down. I mean, I thought you had a few years where some guys made some really bad decisions or listened to some bad advice, and but also at the same time, that was such a small select group of people as opposed to what we're seeing with the trend. I mean, you're talking about it, at most 10 to 12 kids a year as opposed to hundreds and hundreds. And to me, I think it's gonna be a little bit of a cautionary tale when you see the numbers of the kids who didn't get what they wanted out of it. But I could be wrong, but I'll be surprised if this doesn't temper things somewhat.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just wonder if it happens this year, if it takes another year, because so many kids made some blind decisions a year ago because of not being able to take visits and see places, and making those decisions, sort of uninformed in a lot of ways, in the way that they had to be recruited because of COVID. A lot of kids made decisions based on Zoom, not based on campus visits or really getting kind of hands-on feel at all with the coaching staff. So let's talk about the other thing that Sankey mentioned that I thought was newsworthy on Monday, and that is games this fall will not be postponed due to COVID outbreaks. They will be forfeits. Translation, get your football vaccinated. He said that I think half of the league was at 80% in terms of their vaccination. There's another layer there, Austin, for a head coach to have to deal with. And I don't want to get political on the podcast, but we all know what some people believe and where some people's beliefs are in vaccinations, and some people's beliefs are not. Just another layer and another challenge for coaches to try to manage something else when you look at this. I mean, it's not over, I guess, is what I'm saying. And the commissioner made it very clear that he's not postponing games. They're going to be forfeiting games.
Yeah, I mean, 6 of the 14 have got 80% vaccination. I mean, I'm planning on asking Josh Heupel in the morning, or later this morning. Is Tennessee one of those 6? I would venture to say they're not. I do think that it's going to be fascinating because again, you can. I'm not sure you can really tell the kids they have to get vaccinated, even though you strongly encourage it. And most of these kids are, the younger people aren't, really getting sick from this. I'm not doing it. I never got a flu shot when I was growing up. I'm not doing it. I mean, there are people like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this goes down because I said it on the board a few weeks ago. I fully believe it. I think Alabama, you won't see them run into any kind of issues like the whole team that. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what schools can get their kids to buy into this and whatnot. Because if you think about let's think about let's think about 2 names, and they all know they're my buddies, Caden Cooper. And I don't know what their status is as far as vaccination. But my point though is for Cade, this is a contract year, whereas for Cooper it's not. He's a redshirt freshman or however you want to COVID year, whatever you want to call it. But for Cade, he needs to play. He needs to have a really good year. So you just wonder does that affect how decisions are made with older guys that know they're going pro after this year that need to have a good year? Do they go the vaccination route versus maybe they wouldn't in a normal year, but because they need to be on the field, they do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Rob, I think isn't it easier for a team that's got playoff aspirations for a coach to go in and kind of sell it, sell getting vaccinated, as opposed to somebody who's not? I mean, I know some NFL coaches have gone and told their team, hey, I understand you don't want to get vaccinated, but the one thing that can keep you from winning the Super Bowl is the virus that nobody has control of. So does it make a playoff team, a playoff challenging, championship challenging team, is that an easier sell for a coach than not? Or is this one of these things where by the time we get to August, most everybody on a football team in college football is going to be vaccinated?
I think it is an easier sell than the scenario you're talking about, but I kind of think that I would think that it would be an easy sell to, hey, let's not get games canceled, get on board. But again, I don't want to turn down a political lane at all. So I think coaches are in a tough spot. I think kids should want to get vaccinated for their teammates' sake. So one kid who if one kid were to cause a breakout and cause you to forfeit a game, I think that's pretty selfish. But I just think it's a tough spot for coaches.
Does it help that they saw it in baseball with the situation that happened with?
I would think so.
Is that an easier sell for a coach?
Wouldn't you think?
I would think so. But that's just another layer that coaches are going to have to deal with and are having to deal with as fall camps get started. Because again, as Commissioner Sankey said, and I think everybody around the country, Austin, is going to be in the same boat. Nobody's going to go through the scrambles of trying to reschedule a bunch of games. I think it's going to be, hey, it's a forfeit if you can't get out there. So, I'm with you. I want to know where Josh Heupel's team is and how specific he'll get with the answer to that question as he meets the media later today.
Well, I'm really interested to see, what does your support staff do? What do your walk-ons do? Because, Brent, if you look up and a walk-on gets it and then he contaminates a specific position group, this isn't one of your scholarship guys. That to me is all interesting. And then again, I've not studied it enough to know what the exact rules of how college football is going to be. You saw, the Red Sox and Yankees get postponed the other night with players that had been vaccinated that got, that tested positive. How does that work? Is that something that is that going to be different for what they do in the SEC or college football? To me, there's still a lot of different layers, and then, if you're an athletic director, you walk in there and encourage all your athletes, to get this done because let's face it, having a full stands in the fall to make up for some of that lost revenue last year matters. The last thing you want to do is lose a home game because, again, a couple of kids, got it because they weren't vaccinated.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, it's not just football. I mean, all your fall sports are going to have to deal with it because athletes are interacting now in a lot of ways. And, just another thing that coaches obviously have to deal with as we try to get back towards some sort of normalcy this fall. But it's a new normal because there are different things to deal with. All right, let's talk a little recruiting here. Again, we'll have full coverage of Josh Heupel and Velus Jones and Alante Taylor's conversations with the media. We'll have full coverage of all that coming up later today. Austin, let's hit a couple of things in recruiting that's going to open back up the last weekend. What's Tennessee looking to do there, you think, and kind of what do you got your eyeballs on in recruiting? I know you had the 3-2-1 on Monday. If anybody didn't read that, I thought that was a really good summation of what has happened. What do you got your eyes on? What might be happening moving forward the next few weeks?
Well, Tennessee's going to try to have another barbecue type, cookout event thing on the 31st. So that's Saturday, the last Saturday of July. And so I know they're going to try to get, Elijah Herring, Cam Miller, any of the commits, Taven Jackson, any of those commits to come in town if they can. They also understand that, they're in the midst of getting ready for their senior years, and you just don't know what's going on with their local football teams. I mean, most kids aren't going to practice on Saturday, but you never know. So they're going to try to get as many kids in as they can. Addison Nichols is hoping to make it back in, some 23s, Caleb Beasley out of Lipscomb and a few others are hoping to be in that weekend to see Tennessee. But that's kind of where they're at. I mean, it opens for 5 days, and you'll see a few kids across the each state or area or whatever that'll go and do personal workouts for schools that maybe couldn't do it before. But I think it will be relatively quiet outside of a couple of these type cookout type get-togethers that like Tennessee's trying to put on.
All right, clear me up on a couple of rules. You can come in and have a personal private workout. You cannot have a camp, and you cannot take an official visit unless you're a transfer. Is that right, or is transfers out as well?
I'm not sure about the transfers. You cannot take an official visit if you're a high school kid during the month of July, but you can come in for a personal workout, but you cannot have a camp. So like Tennessee couldn't have a camp, Alabama couldn't have a camp, whoever, but a kid could go to Ole Miss and do a personal workout if he needed to. So that's kind of where that's at, with that.
Okay. AP, you feel like those are here to stay, the workouts?
I do. I think kids like them. I'm not sure coaches do. I mean, coaches, I guess, do in some ways, but in certain ways, you'd like them to go against other players to kind of, that they'll be here in some form or fashion. Do they? I don't follow basketball recruiting enough. Do they do personal workouts for basketball?
I mean, it's kind of an open secret that when they come in for official visits, they usually play with the guys.
They just play pickup, right, Rob?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think coaches like the personal workout because they can get right to what specific things they want to see with an individual. I think the downside for coaches is that you can't schedule those, so everybody's got to basically be on call, because if a kid drops in and swings through and, yeah, coach, I'll work out for you today. Then all of a sudden you got to get your film crew out there to video it. You got to get your equipment guys out there, and you're in a bit of a scramble mode because it's hard to pre-plan a lot of those because everybody's schedule is different. But I do think, Austin, that coaches do like the fact they can get right to the specific drills they want to do. Now, in some other cases, they probably want to see a kid compete. You know what I mean? Does he go first in line? Does he stay in the back of the line? All that kind of stuff you're evaluating as well that you can see during camps. But I think for kids, they're gonna stay in that private workout mode because I think they feel like it doesn't kill their legs because it's not as long, and you could do a couple a day if you wanted to, depending on what your travel schedule is like. So I do think that everybody's gonna want them to stay, and I've not heard of anybody suggesting that. I mean, who's going to eliminate them? I mean, you got Mark Emmeren Rob this week, basically talking about decentralizing the NCAA and trying to put some of the responsibilities for management and even to a degree, punishment on conference commissioners, which I think is a fascinating potential development going down the road. But what else is Mark Emmert going to say? Because the NCAA is losing ground in terms of their teeth and their control over the management of college athletics seemingly daily.
Yeah, but and that that leads you to the next question about how does that affect. The obvious question is how does that impact this current investigation? But I can't see. I mean, I just can't see that being affected. Do you? I mean, you think Greg Sankey's going to slap Alabama, one of his cash cows with any kind of probation is going to cost 13 other teams in the league money when they start divvying up playoff revenue?
Well, yeah, I'm with you 100%. I mean, you got Sankey on the record a year ago saying, "Hey, it's not my league. It's the presidents and the ads and the coaches league." When he was talking about the one-time transfers, y'all need to make a vote on it. Not me. I mean, I'm not making that decision. Y'all need to vote on it and decide. So I don't know that a conference commissioner anywhere wants to be forced into that kind of power where they're having to make those decisions on their individual member institutions. And again, I think that's another growing concern when you talk about the policing and management of college athletics when you don't have a central body who's got the power to do that. And clearly the NCAA is losing that power, and Emmert is almost surrendering that power publicly with some of the comments that he's made over the course of the last couple of weeks.
I mean, really, at this point in time, what's the NCAA doing besides running a couple of tournaments in the spring? I mean,
they're not getting investigations done in a prompt manner for sure. They're not handing down punishments in those. They're not making rulings on transfers anymore. You're right. I mean, you don't hear about clearinghouse issues anymore with kids, or very rarely do you hear about that. There isn't a whole lot there that's going on that they're managing. It feels like, and again, it feels like their management's getting reduced each and every day. All right, as we wrap up the podcast here, Rob, let's do a couple of quick hoop hitters here. Coaches coaches been out and evaluating. We got Rick Barnes in the stands at a game on his birthday, hanging out, watching things. You got a couple of current players who have been competing for their countries. When does this team come back together? What's the latest on this current team? What's the latest in recruiting?
I mean, the latest in recruiting is, I think you might see Tennessee. There might be something happen in August with Cason Wallace. That's one to watch. I think Tennessee's in a really good spot with him. And he's a guy that, from people I've talked to, has had a great week at the Peach Jam, Nike's big tournament in Augusta.
Did you drop the Hubs 50 gift? Did that happen yet?
No, it did not happen yet.
Now, what does he do? Fill everybody in on who he is.
Combo guard, 6'5", 6'6", can play a little point, can shoot it, just super athletic, very, very competitive, really long, really versatile, can score, elite defender, big guard, big time athlete. And he went to Augusta as a top 20 prospect. I think he might leave as a top 10, maybe even top 5 prospect.
Wow. Big time tournament for him, huh?
Very much so. And, and I think you're going to, he may be an extreme example, but I think you're going to see a lot of kids, for instance, who weren't top 100 maybe, or who were in the top 100 moving to the top 50, just because people are seeing them. So many different people are seeing them for the first time in a while. Coach Barnes was Tennessee's whole staff minus Justin Gainey. We're in Augusta on Friday. Coach Barnes joined Coach Gainey in Omaha, Nebraska on Saturday to see a couple guys that are playing on the Adidas circuit. And then the entire staff was in Augusta on Sunday, and that's Cason Wallace, Brandon Miller, Jalen Schifino, who was here a couple weeks or a month ago for an official visit, Deontay Green, who was here for an official visit. Just a lot of targets there in both 22, and I think this staff has a pretty firm board. You're going to see some offers come out, probably here and there. For guys that maybe weren't on the board, but I think for this staff, they're especially. I give Mike Schwartz a lot of credit for this. They're really organized with a recruiting board. So I think that at this point in time, and for the past couple of years, they use July almost as much to look ahead to 23 and get those evaluations rolling, or not just 23, but the next year, whatever year that may be. And I think they're doing a lot of that.
24.
And then with the current team, Rob, everybody back together yet? Is that moving in that direction. Everybody's to be back the end of the month. Is that kind of the plan right now?
Yeah, they were all back last week, and I am pretty sure. I need to double check. I think Vescovi is done with Uruguay. I don't think there's anything else going on there, but they were all back certainly last week, and working. Fulke's still working through his wrist thing. I think there's pretty much nothing but optimism that he's going to be back, sometime in September or certainly early October with no issues. Josiah doing fine from his wrist surgery that he had, and Kennedy Chandler just is a guy that you just continue to hear a lot of buzz about.
Yep.
Hanjay Thomas supposed to be here in August. Is that right?
I think he's just going to show up and go to class, man. I don't think there's going to be a ceremony or a commitment. I mean, we might have a story on it, but that remains to be seen. That is the way that one's looking.
Just gonna roll in August and go sit in the classroom somewhere.
Now, something may work out differently with that. That's been so quiet. But I've had several people tell me that is how it's expected to go down.
Who's driving him here? Edric Lofton or Jackie Butler?
Very short trip for him.
Our Gerald Williams, right? AP, one of those guys, somebody. So that's kind of the latest going on in the hoops world. That's the latest going on in recruiting, and obviously the story of the rest of the day today is Tennessee's appearance in Hoover, Alabama at SEC Media Days, and we'll have full coverage of that throughout the rest of the day today. Plenty of recruiting coverage coming up. Rob continues with his opponent previews. Hope everybody's enjoying those. Positional previews will start in just about a week or so as well. So lots of stuff coming up to get you ready for the start of fall camp, and lots of continued coverage in recruiting. Both
2 weeks from today, Hubbard. 2 weeks from today.
Yep, 14 days from today, we're heading to the practice field for Josh Heupel's first fall camp and getting ready for his first season at the University of Tennessee. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest.com podcast. For Rob Lewis and Austin Price, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody.